The titans of old are awakening once again, ready to reclaim their place in a world that has grown cold and mechanical. Witness the epic scale of our latest series, where legends return to the light of day. Click subscribe now and be there for the return of the greats. The room went silent the moment my son raised his glass. "To my real family," Daniel said, looking straight at his new in-laws, "the people who actually showed up for me." 200 guests turned to find me at table 16, alone near the back wall, a folded napkin across my untouched plate. My son's eyes found mine for exactly 1 second before he looked away. The Hargrove family smiled. His new wife smiled. And I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket, felt the envelope I had been carrying since that morning, and decided the time had finally come. But let me go back, because what happened that night didn't start at the Riverside Grand Ballroom. It started 6 months earlier, on a Tuesday in October, when I came home early from a doctor's appointment and heard my son's voice through the kitchen wall. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a forensic accountant with the federal government, the last 12 as a senior investigator for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I have testified in 417 cases. I have dismantled offshore schemes, shell company networks, and multi-generational frauds built by people far smarter and more determined than a retired schoolteacher's son from Baton Rouge. I retired 2 years ago to a house I own outright in Savannah, Georgia, a craftsman bungalow on a quiet street 4 blocks from Forsyth Park that I bought with 31 years of careful savings and my late wife's life insurance. My wife Margaret passed from ovarian cancer 7 years ago. I raised Daniel alone after that. He was 19 when we lost her. I worked through the grief by working, and I raised him through his grief by being present every single day, even when presence was the hardest thing I had to offer. Daniel is 28 now. He met Brittany Hargrove at a corporate networking event in Atlanta 14 months ago. The Hargroves are from old Georgia money, not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that owns 3 commercial properties in Buckhead and sends their children to schools with names on the buildings. They were polite when I met them, measured, the kind of polite that keeps a careful distance. Daniel moved to Atlanta 6 months into the relationship. His apartment lease in Savannah expired in April, and rather than renew or find something new, he asked if he could store some furniture at my place temporarily. Temporarily became permanently. 3 sofas, a dining table, boxes stacked in my garage. I didn't complain. He's my son. The engagement was announced in August. I found out through a photograph on social media, Daniel and Brittany at a restaurant, her hand raised to catch the light from the ring. He texted me an hour later. "Dad, wanted you to hear it from me. We're engaged. So happy." I replied that I was happy for him. I meant it. What I didn't know was what had been decided without me. That Tuesday in October, I came through the back door quietly, the way I always do, so I don't disturb the neighbor's dog. The kitchen light was on. I heard Daniel's voice. Then another voice I recognized, Brittany's father, Warren Hargrove. They were in the living room, the door slightly open. I almost called out. Then I heard my name. Warren's voice, smooth and deliberate, the voice of a man who chairs meetings. "Your father's situation is straightforward, Daniel. Property, retirement accounts, federal pension. At 63 with no health issues on record, we're looking at potentially 20-plus years of asset accumulation. The question is positioning." Daniel didn't answer immediately. I heard ice clink against a glass. "He's already said he wants to leave everything to a veterans foundation," Daniel said. He was clear about it. People change their minds. That was Warren again. Especially when family applies consistent, thoughtful pressure. Your father is lonely, Daniel. He misses your mother. He misses you. That's not a weakness, that's a door. What kind of pressure? Nothing dramatic. Presence. Proximity. Be more available. Spend more time in Savannah. Let him feel needed. Let him feel like the patriarch. And when the moment is right, you raise the estate planning conversation. Frame it around security for his future grandchildren. I stood with my hand against the wall and my breathing very controlled, the way I'd trained myself to breathe during testimony when defendants said things that should have surprised me but didn't. I noted the words. I noted the tone. Warren Hargrove was not speculating. He had thought this through before he arrived. Brittany's voice softer. "And the account access?" If he adds Daniel to any financial accounts as a joint holder, that establishes a pattern of shared assets. In Georgia, that becomes relevant in estate disputes. Warren paused. Has he mentioned anything about the accounts? He offered to help with the wedding costs, Daniel said. I told him we had it covered. Uncover it, Warren said. Let him contribute, generously, and document nothing. I retreated to the back hallway and sat on the bottom step of the staircase. 31 years of reading fraud had just read my own son. The pattern was familiar. The language was familiar. The architecture of it established trust, create financial dependency, position for inheritance. I had built federal cases on structures identical to this one. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side of the bed where Margaret's pillow still smelled faintly of the cedar in the closet, and I worked the problem the way I'd worked thousands of cases before. Evidence, timeline, exposure. The wedding was 7 months away. That was enough time to prepare. I was careful over the following weeks. I changed nothing visible. I called Daniel on the same schedule. I sent the same texts. I accepted an invitation to Thanksgiving in Atlanta, and sat at the Hargroves' table, and ate the food, and complimented the house, and watched Warren Hargrove watch me with the particular attention of a man who is measuring something. But I was measuring too. The morning after Thanksgiving, I drove to the offices of Catherine Reeves on Bull Street in Savannah. Catherine had been my personal attorney for 11 years. She is 61, precise, and has the particular patience of someone who has spent decades untangling things other people made deliberately complicated. I laid out what I had heard, word for word, from memory. I've testified under oath enough times to know how to recall a conversation accurately. Catherine took notes on a yellow legal pad and asked clarifying questions, then pulled up Georgia property and estate statutes on her screen. She looked up after several minutes. Everything you own is in your name only? Every account, every asset, every deed. No joint holders, no designated beneficiaries other than the Veterans Foundation? I reviewed all of it last month. No changes have been made without my authorization. Then your position is solid. She set down her pen. What they described, what Warren Hargrove described, is a textbook undue influence strategy. It's the same approach used in elder financial abuse cases. The fact that your son is involved doesn't change what it is. I know what it is. What do you want to do about it? I told her. She nodded slowly, made additional notes, and told me she would have documents prepared within the week. Over the next 3 months, I built my case the way I had always built cases. Methodically, without urgency, without anger. I had the benefit of professional habit, 31 years of documenting everything, noting dates and times, preserving records that other people assumed were gone or unimportant. In November, Daniel called and mentioned that the wedding venue was more expensive than they had budgeted. The Riverside Grand Ballroom in Savannah, he'd chosen Savannah, he said, because it felt important to honor my city. I said nothing for a moment. Then I said I would be glad to contribute. He said that meant a great deal. The total came to $38,000, charged to a card I had designated for this specific purpose, in my name, with complete records. In December, he asked if I could help with honeymoon costs. A resort in Street Lucia, 12 nights. I transferred $11,000 from a checking account I had opened specifically for trackable, documented expenses. Every transaction was clean. Every dollar had a paper trail. In January, he suggested that the guest list had grown and some additional floral arrangements were needed for the ceremony. $4,200. By February, I had contributed $53,200 to a wedding celebrating a marriage. I now understood I was funding as part of a longer financial strategy. I also did something else in February. I called a colleague from my criminal investigation years, a man named Phil Garrett, who now runs a private investigative firm in Atlanta. I told him what I needed. 2 weeks later, he delivered a manila folder to my door. Warren Hargrove's business record contained one item that was not visible from his LinkedIn profile or his Chamber of Commerce listings. 12 years ago, a civil suit in Fulton County, a former business partner claiming Warren had redirected company funds to a personal holding entity during a dissolution. The suit settled for an undisclosed amount. The partner signed a non-disparagement agreement. But the court filings were public record, and Phil had pulled every page. The pattern was not new for Warren Hargrove. It was just new to me. I added the file to my growing case folder, placed in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, behind 30 years of tax returns that no one else on earth would ever want to read. The wedding was scheduled for April 19th, a Saturday evening. I drove to Savannah's Riverside Grand the morning of the event and checked in with the venue coordinator, a young woman named Claire, who confirmed the final balance, handed me a copy of the contract with my signature, and thanked me for being such a cooperative client. I thanked her. I had one additional task I had arranged with Claire a week earlier, a small, specific request that she had accommodated without asking questions. I checked into the hotel 3 blocks from the venue. The room was clean and quiet, 15th floor, windows facing the river. I sat on the edge of the bed and reviewed the envelope one more time before sealing it. 4 pages, printed and organized that morning. Then I dressed, put on the navy suit I had worn to more consequential moments than I could count, and drove to the Riverside Grand. The ballroom was decorated with white and gold, tall floral arrangements at every table, candlelight across 100 linen-covered surfaces. A string quartet played near the entrance. The seating chart at the door directed me to table 16. Table 16 was positioned near the service exit, a round table set for 8, with a card that read, "Reserved Shaw family," in someone's careful calligraphy. I was the only Shaw in attendance. I sat alone at the table, turned my chair slightly toward the room, and watched the Hargroves work. Warren stood near the bar, greeting guests with the ease of a man on familiar territory. His wife Patricia circulated among tables, placing hands on arms, laughing at the right moments. Brittany's 2 brothers stood with the groomsmen near the window, their body language, the comfortable language of people who had planned and expected to win. Daniel was the last to enter the main reception, walking beside Brittany in a way that made her parents smile. He was happy. I could read that clearly. He was also a man who had made a serious miscalculation, and he didn't know it yet. Dinner was served in courses. My plate arrived last. I didn't eat. The toast began at 8:30. Warren went first, holding a glass of champagne with the casual authority of a man who expects rooms to quiet when he speaks. From the first moment Brittany brought Daniel home, we knew he was someone exceptional, Warren said, projecting warmly across the room. He has worked hard, built something real, and proven himself worthy of our daughter and our family. We are proud to call him a Hargrove. Applause. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. To our son. Their son. I noted the language. Noted that my name had not appeared. More toasts. The best man. A college roommate. Brittany's sorority sister. Every speaker thanked the Hargroves for the beautiful event. My name did not come up. My contribution did not come up. $53,200, and I was table 16 near the kitchen. Then Daniel stood. He took the microphone with both hands and looked across the room with a smile I recognized from his childhood, the one that appeared when he was genuinely moved. I felt, for a moment, a familiar pull, the want to believe. The particular vulnerability of a father who has loved someone since, before they had words. I want to thank everyone who made this night possible, Daniel began. The Hargroves, who have welcomed me completely, who have given me a family I never had. I waited. A family I never had, he repeated slower. I didn't grow up with the kind of support that teaches you how to move in the world. I figured things out on my own, mostly. He paused. The room was very quiet. Dad, I see you back there. Every head turned toward table 16. 200 faces. I want to thank you for writing the checks. I know that's what you're good at. The words landed like a door closing. But today, I want to acknowledge the people who gave me something money can't buy. Warren and Patricia, you showed me what a real family looks like. You showed me what it means to be chosen. He raised his glass to the Hargroves, to the family that made me who I am. The applause was uncomfortable. Some people clapped. Others glanced toward table 16 with the expression of people witnessing something they wished they had not seen. I heard a woman whisper to her companion. I heard a man near the bar say something under his breath that made the woman beside him touch his arm. Warren Hargrove smiled at his wife. Patricia touched her napkin to her eyes. I sat completely still for the count of 15 seconds. Long enough for the room to settle, long enough for Daniel to believe he had delivered the final word. Then I set down my water glass, stood, and buttoned my jacket. The walk from table 16 to the head table is a distance I can cover in roughly 40 steps. I have measured longer distances in harder rooms. I have walked toward people who were looking at me with far more hostility than a ballroom of wedding guests, and I have delivered information they did not want to receive, and I have remained standing when they finished their reaction. I walked. The room watched. I kept my pace even, my hands at my sides, my face, the expression I had worn for 3 decades of federal testimony present, attentive, communicating nothing in advance. Daniel saw me coming and his smile shifted. Brittany put her hand on his arm. Warren leaned slightly forward in his chair. I reached the head table and stopped directly across from my son. I reached into my jacket pocket and removed the envelope. I placed it on the table in front of him, centered between his champagne flute and his dinner plate, with the same deliberateness with which I had once placed exhibit folders before federal judges. "Open it," I said. My voice was quiet, but the room was quieter. Claire, the venue coordinator, had arranged for the music to stop precisely at 8:45, as I had requested. The silence was complete. Daniel stared at the envelope. The smile was entirely gone now. He picked it up, and I watched his hands, looking for the calculation that would tell me whether he still believed he held the advantage. He tore it open, drew out the first page. It was a bank statement, my account, official letterhead, 12 months of transactions, with specific line items highlighted in blue: the venue deposit, the catering final payment, the honeymoon transfer, the floral additions, and at the bottom circled, total disbursed to wedding and associated expenses, $53,200. His face changed. The second page was a document from Catherine Reeves's office, an amendment to my estate plan, notarized 3 days ago, removing Daniel as a beneficiary and directing all assets the Savannah property, retirement accounts, federal pension survivor benefits, and all savings to the James and Margaret Shaw Veterans Relief Foundation, an organization I had registered with the state of Georgia in January, named for my father and my wife. The foundation's articles of incorporation were attached. Daniel's hands stopped moving. The third page he almost didn't lift. But he did. It was a printed transcript, prepared by a court-certified transcription service of the conversation I had recorded on the Tuesday in October when I came home from the doctor. A small digital recorder, the kind I had carried to witness interviews for 30 years, had been in my jacket pocket. The transcript ran to 3 pages. Warren Hargrove's words were highlighted. Daniel's responses were highlighted in a different color. At the bottom, a note from the transcription service with the date, time, and authentication mark. Daniel said nothing. He set the pages down on the table with careful precision, and I recognized the gesture. It was the gesture of someone controlling their breathing. Warren pushed back his chair and stood. "What is this?" "Documentation," I said. I spoke at a volume designed to carry to the nearest 4 tables, and no farther. Not a performance, just clarity. The first page is a record of $53,200 I contributed to this event. The second is my amended estate plan, which directs all assets away from Daniel's name. The third is a transcript of a conversation your family had in my living room in October, discussing how to use my loneliness and grief to position for access to my estate. The whispers started. Warren stepped around the table. His voice dropped, the public warmth replaced by something colder. "You recorded a private conversation in your own home. That's not admissible." "Georgia is a one-party consent state," I said. "I was a party. It is entirely admissible." I looked at him directly. "I spent 31 years with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I have testified in 417 federal cases. I know exactly what is admissible, Mr. Hargrove, and I know exactly what a financial elder abuse scheme looks like. I have dismantled many of them." The room had gone completely still. Patricia Hargrove sat with both hands flat on the table, her expression the expression of someone recalculating. "Dad." Daniel's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "Dad, just let me." "You said I was good at writing checks," I said. I looked at my son, and I let myself feel, for just a moment, the full weight of what he had become. Then I set it aside, because the evidence was what mattered, and the evidence was already delivered. I want you to know those checks are documented. Everyone. The foundation I established will put that money to better use than a wedding toast that forgets who paid for it. I stepped back from the table. Daniel, you are welcome to contest the estate amendment. Catherine Reeves at Bull Street in Savannah handled the filing. Her number is on the last page. She'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. It's ironclad. I turned to Warren. The Fulton County civil suit from 12 years ago is also in Catherine's files. The one where your former business partner alleged you redirected company assets during dissolution. In case that becomes relevant, Warren's face went the color of old chalk. I turned then, and I walked back across the ballroom the same way I had walked in. Measured. No hurry. Behind me I heard Brittany's voice rise sharply. I heard Warren say something to his wife in a low, controlled tone that was no longer warm. I heard a guest at a nearby table say, clearly, he paid for the whole thing? I pushed through the ballroom doors and into the lobby. The valet had my car in 4 minutes. I tipped him, pulled out of the Riverside Grand's entrance, and drove toward my hotel through the warm Savannah April. Behind me, through the rearview mirror, I could see guests beginning to filter out onto the steps, phones in hand, the particular body language of people who had just witnessed something they could not stop telling. I turned my phone face down in the cup holder and drove. That night, my phone registered 41 missed calls. 27 from Daniel, 9 from Brittany, 3 from an Atlanta number I assumed belonged to Warren Hargrove, 2 from Patricia. I listened to none of the voicemails. I ordered room service, ate half of it, and slept better than I had in 6 months. The calls continued for 4 days. On the 5th morning, a hotel employee knocked and said my son was in the lobby and had been there for 2 hours. I told her I would be down. Daniel was sitting in one of the lobby chairs near the window, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He was wearing clothes from the day before, his collar open, his face carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who had not slept in a way they were accustomed to. He stood when he saw me. I sat in the chair across from him without speaking. Dad. He stopped. Started again. I know you heard everything. I know what we were doing. I said nothing. I want you to know. He stopped again. I don't know if there's anything I can say. There probably isn't, I agreed. He looked at his hands. Outside, Savannah went about its morning. A carriage tour passed the window. Pigeons worked the sidewalk. The city was indifferent to us both, as it has always been. I told myself it wasn't what it sounded like, Daniel said quietly. That Warren was just being practical. That I wasn't really going to go through with it. That it was just conversation. He looked up, but I sat there and didn't stop it. And I took the money. And I stood up at that microphone and said what I said. Yes, I said, you did. Brittany and I haven't stopped fighting since Saturday. Her parents blame me entirely. They're saying I knew what you were planning and didn't warn them. A brief, hollow sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Turns out when the scheme falls apart, everyone was just along for the ride. I studied him the way I had studied witnesses for 31 years, looking for the thing beneath the presentation. He looked genuinely wrecked. He also looked young, in a way I had not let myself see for a long time, because it was easier not to. I'm not going to reverse the estate amendment, I said. The foundation stands. Margaret's name is on it, and that's where it belongs. He nodded. But I want you to understand something. I am not angry. I was not humiliated by what you said at that ballroom. I leaned forward slightly. I spent 31 years watching people underestimate patience, watching them mistake silence for weakness, watching them believe that because someone hasn't acted, they aren't capable of acting. I paused. Your mother was the most patient person I ever knew, and she was also the most formidable. You had the privilege of being raised by someone like that, and I wonder sometimes if you understood what you were watching. Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes went bright in the way they had when he was 12 years old and trying not to cry at his mother's grave. That doesn't mean we're done, I said. It means we're starting over, from whatever the real thing is, not the version Warren Hargrove designed. I stood. If you want that, you know where I live. The locks are the same. I walked to the elevator. He didn't call after me, didn't follow. I rode up to the 15th floor, went to the window, and looked out over the river. I had told him the locks were the same. They weren't. I'd had them changed the morning after the wedding, along with the security system and the alarm codes. Old professional habit. You document everything. You verify everything. And you don't leave open doors you haven't inspected. 3 weeks later, Catherine called to tell me Warren Hargrove's attorney had made an inquiry about the foundation filing, looking for procedural grounds to challenge the estate amendment. Catherine had responded with a 12-page brief that she described to me as thorough. 2 days later, the inquiry was withdrawn. In May, Phil Garrett called with a follow-up. Warren's former business partner in Atlanta had been contacted by a journalist writing about elder financial abuse patterns in Georgia estate cases. Nothing had been published yet. It might never be published, but the possibility existed, and Warren Hargrove knew it existed, which was its own kind of consequence. On a Thursday evening in late May, I walked to Forsyth Park as the sun went down. I sat on a bench near the fountain, the one where Margaret and I used to sit on Saturday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, before everything changed. The fountain ran steady and cool in the warm evening air. Families moved around it, dogs on leashes, children running ahead of parents. I have spent 31 years building cases. I understand better than most people that justice is rarely a single moment. It is a process, constructed carefully, one documented detail at a time, and it produces outcomes proportional to the evidence, not to the anger behind it. What Warren Hargrove designed was familiar to me. I had seen versions of it in every city I worked in. The language changes, the relationships change, the architecture stays the same. Someone with resources becomes isolated, emotionally managed, repositioned as a passive participant in decisions being made about their own life. The goal is always the same thing, to make the mark feel fortunate to be used. I was not fortunate. I was prepared. Daniel called on a Sunday in June, in the morning, which is when he always used to call when things were real. He asked if he could come to Savannah. I said yes. He arrived on a Friday, without Brittany, carrying a duffel bag and a look I recognized as the beginning of actually reckoning with something. We didn't talk about the wedding that weekend. We talked about Margaret, about what she had been like before she got sick, the version he was too young to fully remember her laugh at wrong moments, her inability to parallel park, the way she had of telling you the truth while making you feel like you'd figured it out yourself. He cried at the kitchen table on Saturday morning, the kind of crying that doesn't have an audience. I made coffee, and I sat across from him and I let him. I did not reopen my estate to him. I did not restore any accounts or financial access. Those decisions had been made for reasons that did not change because grief looked genuine. Professional habit, again, you evaluate the documentation, not the performance. But I did not close the door. Margaret had raised me to believe in the slow work of becoming someone better than you've been, and I extended that belief to the son she helped me make, provisionally, with my eyes open, in the way that love requires when it has been complicated by evidence. The foundation held its first grant ceremony in July. 12 veterans in the Savannah area received housing assistance through the James and Margaret Shaw Veterans Relief Foundation. A local newspaper ran a short piece about it. The photo showed me handing a check to a 71-year-old Army veteran named Harold, who was wearing a cap with his unit insignia and shaking my hand with both of his. I kept a copy of that photograph in the drawer where I used to keep the case folder. On the patio behind my house that evening, I sat with a glass of iced tea and watched the light go out of the sky over the live oaks. The security cameras blinked their green lights from the corners of the yard. The street was quiet. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor was grilling, and the smell drifted over the fence with the early July heat. I thought about what I had built over 31 years. Not the cases, not the convictions, not the documentation. The habit of seeing clearly, of not allowing what I wanted to be true to overwrite what the evidence showed, of understanding that patience is not the same as passivity, and that the most effective response to a scheme is not rage, it is preparation. They had looked at a 63-year-old widower living alone in a craftsman house in Savannah and seen a door they could open. They had not accounted for who opened it. I had won nothing dramatic. There was no verdict read aloud, no sentence handed down, Just the quiet, complete reinstatement of a life that belonged to me, my house, my accounts, my choices, my name on a foundation doing something Margaret would have approved of. Just the truth, documented and delivered, in front of everyone who needed to see it. Just the thing that justice usually is, when you strip away the spectacle, quiet, unhurried, final. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to Eclipse Vengeance. Drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're listening from. We read everyone but Axtris. And if you want to hear what happens next, click the video on your screen right now.